The nice people over at BestArc were kind enough to send me one of their new plasma cutters to try out. They did send me this machine, free of charge, to provide you with my honest opinion. I am under no obligation to say anything positive. We'll run through what it comes with, how it performs, and we'll make something quick. I'm Dylan, this is Punkerbuilds, and we're going to try out this little machine. This is the BTC500DP 10th generation. It's a dual voltage, 110, 220 volt machine. When hooked up to 220 volt power, the maximum output is 50 amps at 60% duty cycle. On 110 volts, it maxes out at 35 amps. A nice little touch was the shrink wrap plastic on the box. This was delivered on a snowy Canadian day, and it kept the box nice and dry. I had never heard of BestArc before they reached out to me, so I'm going into this without any opinions on this machine or manufacturer. This box will contain our leads. I am shocked that this thing weighs barely anything. We have an air line, a little ground clamp, a manual, a 110 volt adapter, Teflon tape, consumables, hose clamps, and our torch. First impressions, the torch itself feels reasonably sturdy. The torch has a ball joint here. It doesn't increase the mobility that much. As much as it seems like a novelty, you never know when you need that little bit more flexibility in a tight space though. It only comes with one cup, and it comes preloaded with this standoff guide. I'm not a huge fan of these. I find that they kind of get stuck on the surface. I'll give it a try, but I might end up just taking it off and micromanaging my standoff by myself. It also comes with this little wrench. There's a handy chart for all of the settings on top of the machine. This machine maxes out at 50 amps on 220 volt power, but the chart goes way up to 85 amps, 380 volts. This machine will not do that. This appears to be a chart that they use for all of their models. I am just shocked at how tiny this thing is. Like, it's really light, and I feel like you could, oh yeah, there's actually a strap hole here. Sling it over your shoulder and cut wherever you need to. I'm super excited to try this out, so let's get it hooked up and let's run it. Setting up this machine is very straightforward. No two connectors are alike, so they can't be mixed up. The pilot arc lead is the odd one out. It's just an eyelet that goes underneath this little red knob. I just have to compare this really quick. This is the ground off of my TIG welder, and this is the ground off of the BestArc. I keep saying how little this thing is. The machine itself weighs in at 12.2 pounds. With its leads, it's only 16.6 pounds. Our airline connection is on the back side, as well as our power switch. Let's run through the interface. The knob on the right controls the amperage. It goes from 15 amps to 50 amps. We have a purge button, plate and mesh settings. T2 is to pull and hold. 4T is to pull and release, and it will continue to cut. You'll have to pull the trigger again to turn it off. PT is post-flow time, and PA is pilot arc time, which are both adjusted by the knob on the left. To adjust our pressure, we have to pull the regulator diaphragm knob out. It can then be rotated. You'll have to purge the air in the line to see the pressure drop. The last thing our machine needs to operate is to ground our workpiece or table. Part of your setup is to clear away any combustibles from the area. The torch has a protective sheath on it, though it feels pretty soft. I would not recommend throwing sparks directly at this, but that really goes for any plasma cutter lines. Another concern is the concrete. It's notorious for retaining moisture. When the molten metal spatter hits the damp floor, it causes little steam explosions and can destroy your floor. It's specifically why I only use TIG and don't own a MIG. I once took a bronze casting course in college, and they remedied this by putting down a layer of sand. I don't know how much of it had to do with extracting moisture from the floor and how much of it was about creating a barrier of some sort, but sand was a solution. Since I have it, I'm just going to put down a sheet of steel as a barrier. So I've gone around and collected a handful of scraps of different materials and thicknesses, including a high carbon blade, and we're going to see how they cut. Before using this machine, make sure you're wearing all of the required personal protective equipment. We're going to start with mild steel, working from thinnest to thickest. This is 18 gauge steel. So that you can get an idea of how fast I'm traveling in these test cuts, I'm not going to speed up any of the video here. I'll instead just edit out the middle on longer cuts, but each of these are real-time cuts. Punching a hole through the material is called piercing. If you want to save your consumables, you can instead drill a hole. I prefer piercing though. I don't want to waste the time grabbing a drill, but it definitely eats up consumables faster. This formation along the bottom of the cut is called dross. It's often referred to as slag, but slag and dross are technically different. Now, I'm no metallurgist, I don't make the rules. My understanding of it is, slag contains dross, dross does not contain slag. The straight up burnt out, oxidized iron coming off these cuts is just dross. If you're finding yourself getting snagged up on the surface and it's giving you some jagged cuts, you can use soapstone as a lubricant, which doesn't really work if you're following a line that you've drawn. Dross usually chips off pretty easy. You can use a chipping hammer, a chisel, or a random piece of scrap that happens to be closest. That is a seriously nice cut. For all these settings, I just consulted the chart on the machine. There's lots of resources, images, and videos out there to improve your cut quality if you're having challenges. Just set your machine based on the parameters in the chart and make any minor adjustments from there. Once we get into the thicker metals, we really have to slow down to give it enough time to clear the material away. It still did a really nice job. It takes a while to pierce through the thicker material, but it still does it. During this test cut, I was trying to go a little fast to avoid melting between the pierced holes. That was a bit too fast, so the kerf isn't nice and square. I still ended up melting between the eye and nose. This piece is still screaming hot. So this is a little too fine of detail for piercing in 3/8 inch plate, but honestly, only by a little. It's an even slower cut in 1/2 inch, but I've got zero complaints about this. I'm really impressed at this cut quality. If you were considering this machine for 110 volts, it's important to note that it requires a 40 amp breaker on 110 volts. For a 220 volt plug, it's a 30 amp breaker. Let's try some different metals. This is 1/8 inch aluminum. No problem. 3/8 inch aluminum. Sure, a little slow, a little messy, but it does it. How about 1/4 inch brass? Ugh, no, that's pretty gross. That's not really a problem with the machine. I think that's just brass. 20 gauge stainless. You gotta get moving really fast to minimize the carbide precipitation, but it cuts fine. High carbon steel. No trouble at all. I tried cutting some perforated and expanded metal with the machine's mesh setting on and off. I didn't really notice a difference, though I'm now realizing I didn't adjust the pilot arc time, so I'll have to try this again sometime. Cutting mesh isn't something I need to do very often, and it cuts just fine either way. The bottom corner here has a sticker with information for the built-in air filter, which is our water trap. It says it'll automatically release the water if it's not pressurized, and if you need to release it while it's pressurized, there's a little button where the water flows out. You just have to press up on it. It'll blow out any built-up moisture in the system. I've never used a plasma that has a built-in one before. Every one I've ever used in industry had the thing hanging off the machine, ready to get knocked really hard. It's nice that this one is internal. Okay, let's get to the making part. I'm going to be making a little footrest. 2 of the legs are the same, 2 are mirrored. To mirror the pattern, I just have to flip it over. Plasma is such a major advantage in saving material. Being able to place these pieces and manage all the material waste is a game changer. The kerf on the plasma is about 1/8 of an inch, so I'm spacing my pieces about that distance. Since it's easier to hold on to them while they're all together, all the pieces that get drilled and tapped do so before I cut them out of this sheet. Two things are happening here. First, since I'm freehanding these cuts, I can only travel as quickly as I can maintain my line. I'm moving slower than I would with a guide, and it's causing a buildup of dross on the bottom side. Second, the cut quality is decreasing after the number of times I've used this tip to pierce. A new set of consumables would definitely improve these cuts. The downside of piercing holes is that it degrades the cutting tip really quickly. I've only been using this a couple hours and I've already blew through 2 sets of consumables. Most of welding and torch cutting is about how to draw a line in the dark. That really boils down to bracing your body well and having a stable point of reference. Steady hands comes from good body bracing, so let's talk body positioning quick. I'm right-handed, so I'll hold the torch with my right. The job of my left is to maintain a point of contact with the torch. Anywhere in here will do. First thing I'll try to do, where possible, is lock my hip somewhere sturdy. Second, I'll plant my elbow. This is my reference point for all of my motion. Third is the contact point from the torch that ties all of the motion back to my elbow. This is the reference point preventing me from getting lost in the dark. This is more of a concern with oxy-fuel cutting, but I always try to cut uphill so the dross doesn't pool down into my cut as I'm traveling. This would have taken me a whole pile of zip disks. To save some time, I clamp 2 pieces together and remove the kerf lines in sets. Plasma cutters blast a lot of air. You're going to have a really hard time getting sustained cuts with a little compressor. BestArc's website recommends 90 psi at 250 liters a minute. Their Amazon page says 70 psi. Either way, my compressor does not meet that. My 30-gallon ran about 60% of the time I was cutting, but I never ran low on air. 30-gallon is the largest I can reasonably fit in my space, and I'd be hesitant to go any smaller. I'd say a 20-gallon would probably be the minimum, but even that might struggle to keep up. Each of these slots has a small heat-affected zone and an oxide layer that will make it quite hard. I first use a diamond burr to remove the bulk of the material. I come back through and sharpen it up all after with hand files. If I try and go right to using files, it's a little too hard for them to cut. That's so satisfying. I won't hammer it all the way in until I know I won't be taking it apart again. Each of these pins have to be individually fit. They're not labeled or anything, I just intend on hammering them so hard into place that they can't be mixed up. The sealer on these pieces is a paste finishing wax. Now to make a quick carpeted top. The end-all be-all is that it cuts, and it cuts for $420. Because of how lightweight this is, I'm skeptical that this would be able to handle the amount of abuse I've seen done to machines in the workplace. I'm definitely inclined to say, if you don't have $2,000 for a main brand plasma cutter, and it's stopping you from getting the work done, $420 and 2 days shipping is hard to beat. One decent job should easily be able to pay for this machine. A couple jobs after that, and you'd be able to afford a heavier duty one if you needed it. The last addition is soft feet to protect the floor. Time to set the pins. This joinery is called tusk mortise and tenon. I have always wanted to make a piece of furniture like this. I once made curtain rods with a similar design, and I had to drill the slot out, using my jigsaw to bridge across the holes and cleaning it all up with files. It came out great, but it was miserable. The plasma really speeds it up. I'd like to make a lot more things like this, and the plasma makes that possible. Now that's the sound of a sturdy footrest. The real excuse for this elaborate footrest is actually to help out our hound. He's 15 years old and having a hard time getting onto the couch. He's been immediately putting his new step stool to good use. The real question left is longevity, which only time will tell. I've got about 5 hours of cut time on this machine, so stay tuned and I'll be sure to let you know if and when this machine quits on me. Thanks for watching, and thank you to BestArc for sending me this machine. I cannot wait to use this in my future videos. I'm really looking forward to reducing the number of zip disks I go through.